Oh, wow, nice. I'm very noisy today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Woven. We're going to have a fun conversation about whether we should identify as Christian or not. It might be a little bit more of a debate style between John and Andrew because they are definitely not on the same page. And I am just going to moderate said conversation, so it'll be really fun. You just putting up your fists like that felt so fake. Anyways, so that'll be a very fun conversation. A couple of announcements for next week. After service, a group is going to see Flamey Grant, so see Charles after service if you're interested in going to see Flamey. It is next Sunday, right? Okay, cool. Did get that right, so that's good. Next week, John and I are also going to talk about why we think Christ is universal. That will not be a debate. We actually both agree on that particular subject, so that's a good thing. So we're trying something new today. And afterwards, in the Fellowship Hall, or Pride Hall as we call it, there will be food. So please go eat some pasta and chicken and all of that fun stuff. And also, just so people can know you, we're going to start having name tags out. So there'll be name tags in the back if you want to put them on so we can know each other's names and pronouns because we all mess those up a lot. So that's all in the way of announcements. Just a very special welcome to all of you, regardless of your race, your gender, your socioeconomic status, regardless of your views on God or the Bible, you belong here just as you are. Now, because we're woven and we normally do some kind of fun upfront thing, we're going to change it up and we're actually going to start with the talk. So, bringing up John and Andrew now. Ooh, it's ringing. Dang.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh.
Daniel handed me the iPad, which governs our sound, so apologies to everyone, because I'm not Daniel.
So, just so you know, we're going to have a little contest. Andrew and I are going to arm wrestle.
That's why we brought the table out?
And also we're going to have a contest to see whose voice is lower. So I'm going to talk like this and see if...
I'm just going to let you keep going.
See if I can ever...
I think you lost before you started.
Starting to sound exhausted.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I lost both those battles before I started.
That's true.
You don't know about the arm wrestling. You don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And there comes our friend Edie Moon walking in. Yay. Hi, Edie. Yay. Good to see you. So I want to start off by just the question that we all are wondering. Do you call yourselves Christian? And then give you both an opportunity to explain. And we'll start with Andrew.
Okay. Well, short answer is no.
Wait, what?
I haven't burst into flames yet.
You notice that I have a little distance here.
Yeah. Not going to catch fire. So you said explanation too.
Yeah.
So I've had a long journey with Christianity, with faith in my life. Grew up in the church. Honestly, had a very, I'll say, non-traumatic church upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
Parents took me to a Disciples of Christ church here in Kentucky and didn't have a whole lot of religious dogma or arguments about theological topics and things like that. It was just kind of a church where we wanted to tell you about God and tell you how to have a relationship with Christ. And so that was honestly a nice way to grow up, even looking back on it now. I have also been a part of many different church organizations growing up and ended up inheriting a lot of, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it, internalized guilt and shame from a lot of the other kind of church organizations that I was a part of growing up. And I think post-college, I made a conscious and semi-non-conscious decision to shed a lot of that and just see how it felt to no longer feel like I had a standard to measure up to spiritually or just in my life in general. And in so doing, I found a lot of freedom to just be me and to not have some kind of preconceived standard hovering over me, whether it's from God, whether it's from church people or myself, I found a lot of freedom and liberation in kind of shedding a lot of those old ways of thinking. So at the moment, I would say I would not consider myself a Christian.
Yeah. John.
So I do consider myself a Christian. I say those words as a label over myself that I am a Christian. I think it's an experiment to see whether we can call ourselves Christian without being in any way judgmental on people that don't. I think that's still up for grabs, whether that's possible or not. But I hope it is, and that's my goal.
I hope so too.
Yeah, right. And so the reason I call myself a Christian, so several reasons, but top among them for me is I actually love whatever person that is Christ. And so I would even talk about it in Jesus terms. I love Jesus. And I think one of the good parts of our upbringings was, in fact, you talked about that as a relationship with God kind of thing. One of the good parts about growing up evangelical was especially when I was young, they took out almost all of the filler stuff and really left it with, you get to love this person of God. And for me, all of the other stuff that was laid on it really sort of came later. There were rules from the beginning, it's not that. But the rules were always in service of the relationship. And so I think I grew up in a pretty healthy that way. My mom was really consistent, so the rules were tight, but they were always, because this is how we can love God well. So it was never, like she never talked to me about hell or about disappointing God. None of that came from my parents, and I think there was, or from my church really, in the early years. It was just really this idea of being in love with the person of God. And so for me, there are two things. There is grieving for what I would say people using the name of God in vain. So when people call themselves Christian and do opposite of what Christ taught, that for me is breaking the commandment, the third commandment of using God's name in vain. So there's grieving over that.
Oh, so it's not when you say, God damn it?
Turns out it is not that.
Sorry, the joke was there.
Yeah, who knew? It isn't that at all. And so on one side there's the grieving. On the other side, I want to identify with the historical Jesus who, some of us would think about in alive terms.
Yeah.
That is the epitome to me of what God is like. And I want to identify with that.
So I love both of these answers because I am firmly, not that it matters because I'm just moderating, in the camp of I don't know. I think the name is tall, and it's going to be hard to hijack what is right now the majority in it. So that's a really tall ask just by using the name. And at the same time, there is something unique in that relational sense of integrating life and science and everything with something higher than us. I've personally found a lot of peace in that, and I don't really know how to reckon those two at the current moment.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, the term Christian, wasn't used in the Gospels.
Yeah.
It's not until Acts where they first, in Antioch, were first called Christians.
Yep.
So there's a little bit there's some leeway in there for us.
Thank
even
goodness.
those of us who have, even want to be called Christian, in that it's not a Gospels thing.
Right.
It's not a Jesus thing.
No.
It came later. And it, for those who came later, it was the best word they could come up for what that felt like for them to have that kind of relationship with their God.
Yeah, and I'm more okay with the word Christ now than I am Christian, which is funny because Christ has a more universalism angle to it, which we'll talk about more next week. But I do think it's teeing up kind of the next thing I wanted to ask you both was, is there, for John, what is your favorite part? And Andrew, is there a part of the Christian tradition that still kind of speaks to you that you kind of have a connection with personally? Either of you can go. I don't.
Well, I went first last time. So, yes, there are definitely parts of Christianity that still I find compelling. I find life-giving, peace-giving. Recently, you read to me a portion of The Universal Christ by Richard Rohr, and he talked about the idea of Christ being God's essence in creation since the beginning.
Yeah.
And, something that predates even the incarnation, even historical Judaism and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if I said this exactly, but when you told me that, I was like, God damn it, you got me interested in Christ again.
You actually did use those words to me. Just to give some context, anytime I read something that makes me want to throw a book across the room, I read it to Andrew so that he can want to throw the book across the room with me, so I don't feel alone in my feelings.
Yeah, that's valuable.
Yeah,
But
it is valuable.
I bring that up to say a lot of what Rohr does, the contemplative side of Christianity, the very much dreaming about what God can be and what we can be as people who walk in step with God, I find very compelling because that to me is it's still very earthy too. It's very potentially justice oriented. It's very related to how do we live here and now.
Right.
And
it's at a present focus.
it has a present focus because I think even thinking about, beginning of time, where was God, kind of, it trickles down, I guess, those lines of thinking. If there was Christ there at the beginning, why would there not be Christ in everything now? And that, it's almost, I don't want to say academic, but I like thinking about it.
It's a little academic.
It's academic, sure, fine. I like
In a good
being
way.
able to think about Christ-like things without a dogmatic pressure to be something.
Yeah.
And that's something that was very over me for a long time.
Yep.
And writings like Rohr's helped me do that. I've always liked the wisdom literature in the Bible as well. The Psalms, the Proverbs, things like that.
I've always disliked it.
Really?
This is going to be
Interesting.
fun.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Arm wrestle will be right after this conversation.
This is going to be really fun.
Wisdom stinks.
I love wisdom. No, artistic engagements with God are something that I still very much love, honestly.
Nice.
So those are probably the biggest parts of it for me that I still find very interesting.
Yeah, I do too. I love that part of what Christ can be and Christian. I mean, I would be really happy if we could come up with another name.
Yeah.
So in the Bible, in the New Testament, the word that they use that used to be translated saints, which is their normal word for Christians.
Yeah.
NIV and NLT both translate it as believers. I can't go, believers is fine if that's what you like, but that sounds so much like a cult to me.
Me too.
That that's a way I don't want to go.
Right, absolutely.
Because if Christian has been hijacked, believers has probably been hijacked in a worse way.
Yeah, believers is probably a little too taboo, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I don't like Christ follower.
No.
Because I think Christ invites us into this mutuality of relationship that I think is extraordinary.
Right, similar to the Trinity idea of the
It is.
interrelationship
That's
that
right.
they have, which is why Christ follower is too limiting.
Exactly, because that implies the hierarchical, patriarchal kind of understanding of God that I think God goes to great lengths to dismiss in Jesus.
Yeah.
So if you were to just read the Old Testament, you would think God was all about patriarchy and hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you read the New Testament and you see Jesus be the God of empathy
Yep.
and of mutual submission. And that is a really different covenant.
For sure.
That is a new covenant. That is the New Testament. That's a really different understanding of who Jesus, who God is. And so for me, I would love it if there were a term that encompassed that kind of almost marriage-like relationship. You know, the Greek church fathers used the word perichoresis, meaning the holy dance of the Trinity. And the idea is the Trinity is doing this beautiful dance together, and they invite us into the dance. So instead of inviting us into their service, they invite us into their dance.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that because I just read a book that I understand by Richard Rohr that was like, I understand 10% of. But he talked about how science does it too, with atoms and our molecules and everything, and how they do this interconnected dance that creates us and allows us to be in being. And that is supposed to emulate what the Trinity does, which is just totally mind-trippy, and I don't even understand what I read.
Yeah, right.
It's just way too dense for me. I'll have to read it like 70 times, and then I'll probably say I've got like 8% down. So,
You know, some years from now, we're all going to say about Richard Rohr that he had no idea what he was saying.
yeah. I'm starting to think that now. He keeps writing it. And
We've been trying to figure it out for so long, you know, that someday we're going to, no, he actually didn't know what he was saying. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and it is interesting, and this leads into kind of the next thing I want to ask both of you, because I've known both of you for more than a decade, so this is what is as fun as I kind of know at least a little bit of your lived experience, where you're coming from, and we're kind of dancing around it. An ironic twist of things is that Christianity has for sure denied a lot of the sacred practices that were a core part of it. A simple one being like, and I didn't learn this till Asbury when I was there in 2008, like Lectio Divina, but then there's other ones within the Jewish tradition that used to be like part of the core of like how they read scripture. And there was no intention of biblical literalism. It was all about how to see God in things that we don't normally see God in. How do we engage with the Holy Spirit differently? How do we think about Jesus differently? That's totally different than how I grew up with Christianity. I was fortunate to not grow up around biblical literalism at all. The church I had growing up didn't marry to that idea at all. But it was very rules-based, and it lost a lot of its mysticism and sacred elements that were in it previously. Why do you, and I'm just curiosity here, what do you think that is from your perspective, and does that kind of sway your opinion on this Christian conversation? Because there's no question we've moved from where we were.
I think for me, a lot of Christian Protestantism in America specifically feels, as you say, pretty disconnected from what you might call the historical church, at least in my experience. There is kind of a focus on right living and evangelicalism in America, and you know, that's maybe, I guess, baseline, and
It's very belief-centric,
very
too.
belief-centered. You know, you want to make sure that an entire congregation believes everything rightly, and you know, maybe does some justice works in the community and things like that, which I love service to the community, but it does feel like, at least looking back on a lot of my church experience, there was, until college, when I was exposed to more traditions and understandings of Scripture, it did feel like a lot of American Christianity was pretty homogenous. Like, it's come to church on Sunday, come to a potluck every now and again, and then go home. And
nothing against potlucks.
Not looking like, no.
We're
nothing
all
at
in.
Because
Yes, there's one after this service.
Over
Yes.
the service.
yeah.
Just to clarify, all in.
First, Sarah, I love potluck. It's on the internet now.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. That's still true. But I guess what I'm trying to say is there is a lot of dimension and a lot of history to the church, to Christianity, to even Judaism, that holds a lot of practices that I was entirely unfamiliar with until I studied it as, to get a degree in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a shame and a tragedy. And I think if more of those paths were more well trodden in America these days, I think the church would look a lot different, for one, and two, I think a lot more people would find more there for them, not necessarily belief-wise, but something compelling to, I don't know, just help people get through their days, help people engage better with Scripture, with life in general, because you mentioned Lectio Divina, that method of reading sacred writings that helps you engage with it in a different way. There by no means is that limited to just reading Scripture.
No.
So one of the first conversations I had with Sarah McAfee was me learning and discovering how that kind of sacred reading into things can bring life even in something that has nothing to do with historical Christianity. And I think that's part of my positioning too, is I've found a lot of life in reading the sacred into something like, hell, I don't know, a fucking video game I played.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, it sounds silly, sure, but like,
But you made a YouTube video
people
of it.
created art and people made something with an intent, and when you engage with that, when you actually allow yourself to go to those realms, even in something that seems like it would be entirely divorced from spirituality, I think you can find a lot of meaning and a lot of growth in that. And again, I'm not here to like plug my way of thinking as like I'm the enlightened atheist or whatever. I don't even know what to call myself, but like I do think there is worth in even applying spiritual things to non-spiritual other parts of life, and it can bring you just as much growth and development and life as keeping it all within sacred spaces. And that general application of that stuff is part of why I don't feel the need to explicitly refer to myself as Christian, because I find that life in different paths as well.
Yeah, I for sure resonate with that idea, and that was introduced to me by you two. Bono and some others gave that idea. No, I'm joking. It wasn't, not that you two.
But
By you two.
Yes,
Bono
but actually
does subscribe
hilarious.
to some of
Bono does subscribe to that, so that's
subscribe.
hilarious. You said a joke that's totally true.
Yeah, no, that's really true.
Yes, that
true.
is something
And
Bono does.
Bono left the church,
Yes.
but still says this Christ way is the right way.
That's right. That's right.
And so in a lot of ways, we have followed them.
We should have.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing changed. Just remember the old worship arts days?
Yes.
Everybody wanted to sound like you two, and now we're still following Bono around.
Yes, we did want to sound like you too. That's so true.
Those of you unfamiliar with contemporary worship music, the music sound that they made all comes from U2, through Coldplay to contemporary Christian music. That's where it all came from. When we were raising our kids, we were steeped in evangelicalism, but I think we taught them in a way consistent with what you were talking about, which is we took out most of the evangelicalisms, not all of them, but we took out most of them, and so we didn't have rules per se. Now, Mish, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I meant to be doing as a parent was to say, is what you want to do actually out of love? And if it is, then we're in. If it's against love, then we think it's a bad idea. And so instead of the way that most of us were brought up with, don't do that, it's wrong, do that, it's right, this was the question. Does this foster love, or does it go against the ways of love? Now, the problem with that was, there were a couple problems. One was, they're good arguers. And so they could do almost anything they wanted, ultimately, if they say, no, this is really about love. And so that's why I cheated my friend, I was trying to love them well. And the other problem is it takes so much conversation to figure out everything. So rules are a shortcut. And the church has historically made the shortcut from love to rules. And now we can't do that anymore. So part of what's happened with your generation, with millennials and with Zs, is we have divorced the idea of the shortcut of rules. And the beautiful part of that is you get to decide what sexual relationships look like for you. What is out of love?
Yeah.
And what isn't out of love. And the downside is it takes so much energy to figure out in every case what love looks like.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. I think that the downside of the energy and time is worth getting rid of the shortcut.
That's really good. I want to flip this because we're going to go into some fun, more troubling territory will be the word we use. Is there a part for each of you that you think is kind of problematic in the Christian tradition? And what I mean by this is still an area where you're like, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with that part.
Yeah, can I go first?
Yeah.
The most troubling part for me, and this was a part that I also propagated, was and to be fair, Jesus, some of Jesus's words could absolutely be construed to mean this. That there is an in-group and an out-group.
Wow. That's so true. That stings really bad.
That is the thing that about Christianity that is, first of all, most troubling. Second of all, I think most unlike God, despite some of Jesus' words. But the real God, I think, most unlike God. And third, the thing that is that I most want to disassociate myself from as calling myself a Christian.
Yeah.
Every time that we make exclusivity who God is, I think that we, again, malign God's word. Now, I realize historically that the Old Testament is all about exclusivity.
Yeah.
That's the point of the Old Testament, is being Jew is good, being Gentile is bad. Now, you can become Jewish if you want. You can become a convert, but that wasn't the point of Judaism. The point of Judaism was, let's be our in-group together, and sucks to be everybody else. That was really the message of the Old Testament. Now, we see glimpses of it in the prophets, especially what I think comes into the New Testament. And in Jesus, we see this very different thing. Now, he said himself, I was sent for the lost sheep of Israel. But his actions continually said, include, include, include. The only people that he excluded were those who were exclusive. And that's what we would say about Woven, too. The only people that are not welcome here are people that won't welcome other people. We say that is a legitimate exclusivity. And so for me, I want to identify with that part of Jesus that is the inclusive. Now, just because the church has pretty much gotten it wrong from the beginning, until now. It doesn't mean that I don't identify with that part of Christ, but that's the most troubling part of calling myself a Christian.
Gotcha. Good. What about you, Andrew?
You're asking the person who claimed they were not Christian to find their most troubling part of Christianity.
There is a reason you left it.
I think, and you can tell I didn't really pregame this question super well, but I think kind of along similar lines to what you were saying, John, the most troubling part for me is kind of this through line of expectation that you become a Christian, you live your life in such a way as to prove that you are still a Christian to the end, and then eternity is yours, whatever the hell that looks like. And it's, I guess I've seen such and we've been in groups, you and I both, that have such an eternity mindset.
Oh my gosh.
That I feel like just the whole through line of like, gain converts, be converted yourself in order to attain to this end point.
That's really not attainable.
Yeah.
It's really not attainable.
Yeah, and it's just
real talk.
It's problematic to me because one, there are so many versions of what that looks like.
That's right.
That
churches don't agree on that.
Churches don't agree on that. You know, churches split over this kind of stuff. We have hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of denominations in America alone because of things like this. But just this idea that you do, you choose to believe and do these things in order to reach this utopia, this eternity. And we talked about this in Sunday school a little bit today. Somehow I'm still going to Sunday school, but we talked about this in Sunday school today. Yeah,
me too. I don't know what all this means.
I don't like, and maybe here's my real answer. I don't think I like talking about heaven, because to me, where I am right now, it feels like such a thing divorced from our present reality that I don't know the worth in it other than kind of discussing the mystery of it. And that's just my opinion. I know there are other people in other stages of life and in other perspectives where it's like heaven is a very great thing to contemplate and a very important thing, and I would not begrudge anybody that. I find for myself that has been such a, I don't want to say distraction, but I found, there's a song lyric by a band named August Burns Red that said, and I'll probably quote it wrong, but it says, "Stop dwelling on what happens when we die. Let's focus on what we do when we're still alive." And I know that's not exactly the right lyric, but that's the point. And I listened to that in high school when I was worried about like what heaven looks like and how I'm supposed to get there. And I heard that lyric and I was like, that feels very freeing. That feels very like I can do something here and now and not worry about this finish line that I'm supposed to get to somehow. And so I think that's kind of in a lot of ways, one of my biggest trip-ups, I think.
Yeah, I think we're kind of all on the same page, because mine is like the infighting. My least favorite part about Christianity is the infighting within it.
Wow, that's great.
Because it confuses you, and it's meant to cause confusion. It does the opposite of what they think it does, right? Because they're just standing on some kind of moral high ground that doesn't exist. But all it does is create the very doubt that they don't want in their areas, which is why deconstruction is popular, is because you all can't get in line and figure out what's going on. All they did was sow doubt. Like, 2025, women can't serve communion. Like, that's bullshit. Like, what is that? Like, we nitpick words and songs that we sing. What? That's it. Like, our entire college career was, we may have to sing at this lyric, we can't sing that. Like, that's so dumb looking back, but you're not, you were right there with us in it.
I may have been there.
Yeah, it's fatiguing.
I witnessed classmates break down in tears because teachers yelled at them.
That's right.
For their opinions on lyricism and
that's right.
music styles in church.
That's right.
Like,
absolutely berated.
Not be okay after a class at a university because of things like that.
it was just like there's so much intensity in it that wouldn't be in there. But this kind of leads into kind of my next part where I'm going to kind of combine two questions here. One, we, Andrew, myself, you were there as well, and Michelle are the only three that were there for this particular chapel service. And it was the most awkward thing I have ever sat through in my entire life, and it is when Asbury became a university.
Yeah, we already knew, those of us that were there already knew what chapel that was going to be.
I mean, but this leads into my question, because you gave me some great advice post that chapel that I've clung on to, which leads into kind of where I have question marks around the term Christian. So there's just a great awkward moment where these people, who many of whom were my friends, just went up and just rando started praying and hijacked the service. And normally at that time, people would have thought I would be one of those people. I'm sitting awkwardly, completely embarrassed. I have no idea what to do, because these are my literal friends are up there doing this. I'm like, oh shit, what do I do? And so I just sit there. And so then afterwards, both sides hate me. They're like, you're a part of that problem, Logan. So I was hated by both sets at the end of it. Like, I was part of the problem, but I didn't participate, so I was such a bad person for not participating.
For just sitting into chapel
For
service.
sitting there, my face beat red of embarrassment. So naturally, I end up talking to you about it. I don't even remember when, but it was at some point, you're like, the problem with that was people were trying to do a good thing under the wrong flag. And, even though their intentions were probably pure, the flag was totally wrong. They missed the moment. This wasn't Jesus at all. And that really circles into, we're under a flag right now. We literally have a task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias and to promote Christian nationalism. That's a flag. That's part of this umbrella that we have to reckon with. And that's kind of my challenge is, how do we commit to Christianity when that umbrella is bigger than the movement we're part of?
Yeah, and just on the former point, I want to point out that Michelle was in the balcony during that chapel, having the best time of her life.
I bet she was.
Because
I was dying.
I probably wasn't either, because I was genuinely confused.
I was
you didn't
too.
know what was going on.
I didn't know what was happening.
I was
Like
traumatized.
Logan, I saw friends of mine.
And
Yeah.
while Logan was feeling cringe and just the pull of the two things, that kind of controversy just fuels Michelle. And I remember looking back and seeing your face, and it was just this delight.
Well, and I had friends who were I really respected, in a spiritual sense.
Yeah,
People that
me
I felt
too.
like
Me
were
too.
ahead of me in terms of Christianity, going up and praying at the altar during the service, and I was like, they're concerned about something, it looks like, or they're moved in some way, and then some of them would get up to the podium and start speaking, literally hijacking the service, and I was like, oh no, this is,
Exactly.
I don't know.
It was the most
I
cringe
don't
thing
know.
I've ever been a part of.
It was, oof.
Yeah, and also it was stupid.
It was
So
stupid.
there's that.
It was stupid.
It was putting a theological twist on something that had nothing to do with theology.
Yep, absolutely.
It had nothing to do with God, and yet, throughout the church, this has been one of the big things of being Christian.
Kind of a
Yeah, that's
microcosm.
right.
of
It's a
Christianity.
microcosm of what's
This-
happened in
this
Christianity.
thing that you would think has nothing to do with God, because it doesn't, is somehow firmly against God.
That's right.
And in
Becoming
case
a
we didn't say it,
university.
it was about the college literally becoming a university. The
That's
name
when it
changed.
happened. It was about the name change.
That was the controversy.
Yeah.
That was
and,
it.
And it got hijacked as something to do with God.
Yes.
This was
That's what happened.
against God's will for the for the college.
Yes.
I don't know.
It was
I don't know.
weird.
It was wild.
It was wild. We can all agree on that. But isn't it interesting, right? Because it's happening now on a
Yeah.
bigger stage.
Right.
Now with this task force.
And I'm open to the possibility that at some point I will have to cease calling myself a Christian. I'm open to that possibility, not because I want to give up,
right.
but there comes a time when language changes. And so there is a particular gay slur
That's right.
that used to just mean a bundle of sticks. It literally meant that
That's right.
in usage, in common usage. It became something else, and now we never use that term.
Right. Us queers are reclaiming now.
Yeah, it's on its way. It's on its way.
I say we by straight people.
Yeah. Correct.
You can use it all you want.
Yeah.
You're allowed to. But I'm not.
Yeah,
And
right.
I can never use that word.
Yeah, please don't.
No, and it literally means a bundle of sticks.
Yeah.
But because it's been hijacked by enough of the population, language changes, and it means who can use it and who can't. And I agree that at some point Christian may become that. Like, I'm going to fight the good fight right now. I don't think we're at that point yet for me. I want to claim this title, but if there comes a time in the next 4 years specifically where it becomes so hijacked that all of our people, all of my people feel the oppression of what that word has come to mean, then I'm out. So I think there's a time when we call it and we say language has changed. All right, we're going to have a new word.
I would agree for what
Yeah.
it's worth.
Yeah,
That's
you're
definitely
already
something we
there.
don't-
Yeah.
You're already
No,
there.
well,
I'm not
and-
there yet,
and
but
I find there's actually something I don't think we disagree on all that much. Is I find a lot of comfort in knowing there are people like you, like Tim and April from the New Evangelicals, who are wanting to reclaim these words, much like the queer community has reclaimed words such as queer.
That's
and
right.
by the way, I have left evangelical.
Sure.
Yeah.
They still use it,
Yeah. Oh, I can't do that.
and I think that word has gone by the wayside.
Which I was firmly like, what the hell are you doing? Before they came here. Before they came here.
Yeah, that's right.
And you interviewed them.
I did. And I asked them.
Tim and April's
Yeah.
explanations for why they want to keep that language specifically and why they want to redeem the usage of that term, I was convinced of the goodness of them doing that.
But not for us.
Certainly
Yeah.
not for me.
Yeah.
Well, and I think they're coming to terms with its own problematicism, and that's why they have a sub show called the Tim and April Show. It doesn't have, like, it's under that umbrella, right? But there's a sub, right? So whenever they're going and talking about more political, they're not using that language.
Well, the
It's
Bible for
interesting.
normal people
That's right, the Bible for normal people.
changed their name.
That's right.
And I totally interrupted you, but you were talking about evangelicalism, and I that.
No, you're fine. You're totally fine. I mean, you asked about the current state.
Yeah.
American Christianity, the things that are happening on political levels and all that. And I find it really concerning. I'm in a place where I'm trying to go by this mantra of don't listen as much to what people in that party and this administration say, but look more at what they do.
Me too. That's what I'm
Because
trying
if
to
you
do.
listen to everything that you say, you're going to drive yourself insane, because I've been on the verge of that for a while.
Yep, muzzle velocity.
Yes.
That's their philosophy.
A tsunami of idiocy
Yep.
is
That's
what
right.
I've heard said about it, and I think
Well,
that's
that's
accurate.
a good phrase.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But all that to say, this task force against anti-Christian bias is a thing they've done, is a thing that they have put together
That's right.
in the spirit of preventing any consequences from happening to people who say padlock themselves to the doors of a Planned Parenthood and verbally assault anybody who tries to get in,
Yeah.
under the guise of peacefully praying
Yeah.
for something like, it's a smokescreen. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm getting really political now.
Yeah.
You tell me to
No,
leave
no.
if you
No,
want. but
no, we're all in.
it's a smokescreen for.
No, that's an issue.
yeah.
That is an issue.
We can talk about that. That is an issue, and it's taking my name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I'm incensed by it, can you imagine God, who owns the name, how they feel about their name being co-opted like that?
Yeah, because one of the things that I found a great comfort in Christ being universal is that means it is inclusive in nature. And we're trying to, with this task force, derail, which makes and it's only been incremental in what I'm about to say. I mean, we haven't really made much progress at all, but incremental is better than nothing. But we're trying to, the current administration is trying to reverse that with racism, sexism, homophobia. I mean, these things are now becoming more empowered. And part of the challenge is, right, is we're in a space, we meet in a building that identifies as a church, and how do we do that? How, the silencing, I mean, it's already been known that many of the places to get ourselves out there has been changed. The algorithm has been changed to benefit more Christian bias, and it goes, and they're changing it to where if you use what they call quote unquote woke words, you won't be seen as well. So like these things are really happening, all under a task force of anti-Christian bias. And with that happening, and that is real, scarily, and think about it, 30 days this has already happened. How do we keep moving forward with this word? Like, can we? And this is where I'm in the firmly I don't know, right? Like you find so much comfort in God being better than I think. I find so much comfort in that.
Yeah, I do too.
But then I see this and I'm going, where's God in this? Like, is this real? Because this is happening.
I think regardless of how you choose to identify yourself and whether or not you would say you would call yourself sincerely a Christian or not, if you are someone who wants to fight back against a growing sentiment of homophobia, of race homogeny, if things like that, I just think you need to be louder about who and what you support. There are some people and some organizations, I think, that are called to argue these facts and are called to be in the middle punching back on these things, but I think at the very least, even if you're not up for the argument, because I'm not an argumentative person, but even if you're not up for the argument, you have to be explicit and loud about who you do support: the queer community, people of color, immigrants, everyone who has been made a boogeyman, who isn't. You have to say that out loud and more loudly as a way to fight back against these kind of things, because like you say, even online, algorithms are being changed to suppress things that do not conform to the way some people want to think.
That's right. I mean, it's happening.
Yeah.
Like, my worst fear happened faster than I thought. It's funny, though, because you totally are not an argumentative person. I'm like, let's go start a fight. Like, I'm so ready to fight with people about what they think. Yeah. Two final things, though, and this is fun. Is there anything that actually would make you, not just the word Christian, but that would actually make you walk away from being a Christian altogether? Like, all the practices altogether? Because this is kind of an interesting thing, right? Because we're seeing kind of the worst of it on display. So what's is there anything that this is too far?
Well, there's nothing that would make me leave Christ. I mean, and it's not a matter of being sure of anything. It's a matter of I've picked this. I've picked Christ as my soulmate. And that's nothing, there's not a way for me to leave that. Whatever somebody else does, however they co-opt the name. Even if Christ instead of Christian becomes, a swear word in terms of how I think of taking the Lord's name in vain. And in many ways it already has. I can't leave the Christ I love. The church, I always want to say, I'm a pastor, but not that kind. And I go to this church, but it's not that kind of church. I always want to qualify it because it's become this other thing.
Yeah.
And I'm still, I don't know if there's anything, I don't know if there could be a place, there probably could be, where we just have to start over with the church.
Wow.
Where, you have to burn it down and start over. I'm so wed to this beautiful community here at Beaumont and at Woven that I would never want to leave it.
Yeah.
But if we have to rename it, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, if we have to redo how the structuring is
Yeah.
to make it work.
I will even say, as someone who doesn't claim the moniker Christian, I have a hard time saying that there's anything that would make me walk away from all of it. Even like spiritual practices and things that I've held on to as valuable. I think if I'm at the point in my life now where I still find value in some of these things, I don't think there's anything new that could happen, that show up, that would make me say, well, no, it's all gone now. Nothing at all, nothing spiritual, just get it all away from me entirely. I think kind of like you said earlier, because language changes so much.
It does.
There are things that you can, do. I even hesitate to call what I like a sacred thing, the Lectio Divina, those kind of things. They're sacred readings, but sometimes I don't even like using the word sacred. I just call it kind of a mindful practice, a spiritual practice, that kind of thing. Again,
Mindfulness
new
is great.
words, new language for maybe the same old things. And so I think if there is a time when Christianity is entirely co-opted by something I hate, I don't know if that would affect my day-to-day much, generally. I think I could still value some of the spiritual things that I still value, and maybe just feel even less obligated to, I don't know, pander to more Christian elements. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to add my own bias into this as the one who is, I've been abused by the system here, and me doing this is hard sometimes. I do wonder often if it's going to look like this in even 2 years. I do wonder that. And I hope it doesn't look different, because I really like what we have, and it's beautiful. But I do wonder. And that is, for me, it's much more about doing this communal life. And anyone can call it whatever they want. Like, whatever God needs to look like for you is good by me, because you're part of something bigger and something better. And regardless of names and language, that's something that's really important. And as someone who has been damaged by literally using the phrases like Jesus and a lot of the words we talked about today, I do find a lot of solace in a real communal aspect that sticks together through things, even in resistance. And I do have to wonder if what we're doing will have to look more like resistance in church in a few years. I don't know, of course, but that's my question to myself often. And am I up for that in this kind of way? So final thing as we get ready to transition to communion, which we can call that today. Did you guys change each other's minds on anything?
Have I deconverted you? Say it into the mic. I'm kidding.
I think I'm a little more ready to ditch the word Christian. I think we've got to wait and see what happens with it.
That's right.
I'm ready. I love the fight. I don't love the fight, but I'm ready for the fight if it's a fight. But if it's just playing into what their words, then I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm a little bit more open to that. No, I've been fairly open, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I feel like I've got maybe the same answer. It's like I don't feel like I've never wanted to go down the route of anti-theism or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the most helpful path to trod. And again, I do find help and comfort and community in spiritual practice, and a lot that does overlap with at least our brand of Christianity. And again, I don't, there's nothing against Christ himself, because in the moments where I feel like I may have encountered him, I've really appreciated it. But I don't feel compelled to take up that moniker or that identity in a significant way, rather than to just show people maybe in positions like me that there are spaces like this where it doesn't have to mean everything that it may have meant before. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so good. We're going to get ready to go into communion, and then we'll close the service. And Daniel, I have an improv idea for you that we haven't talked about. Because we have a potluck with food ready, Daniel's got a really awesome Black History exercise for us to do while we're eating food and stuff in there. So let's take communion. We'll formally close this time, and we'll have fun with that in the other room. All right. Now, as we take this communion, let me end this with this benediction. Now listen to the sounds that stir within. Listen to the cries for help that ring around you, and follow a path of healing and liberation for you and all you encounter. Take peace in the sound of your own voice as you choose the life that honors your truest self. May it be so. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next week.